Hi friends, welcome. It's CJ English here and Brenda on behalf of Turtle Mountain Animal Rescue. And we have some of our bottle babies. If you saw us earlier in the week, Brenda did a sort of tutorial about newborn bottle babies. These guys and gals are 3 weeks old tomorrow. Mama died, so these are orphans. These are not the parking lot pups. This is a different litter. We have 3 of them. Erin has 2 of them, and I believe Marissa has the other 3. This is Prism. This is little girl, little white paws, and she's so sweet. And she smells really good, and she's really soft. And she's the biggest out of the crew, and maybe perhaps the sweetest. And then this is, dare I say, the runt, but she's little. This is Twinkle. This is Twinkle. And they're doing great with Brenda. Brenda is one of our longtime and special fosters who really specializes in, well, anything that we ask her to do. She's wonderful. Look at this little one. And this is Chimes. This is the little boy. The other 2 are girls. So we've got Chimes here. And they're going to hang out with us tonight for Ladies' Night. Chimes is crashing the party. And I know a few other guys out there are crashing the party too. But you gotta have a party to crash, so that's totally cool with me. Like every Wednesday or every other Wednesday at 7, I'm going to be reading from Rescue Matters, which really is the story of Turtle Mountain Animal Rescue and how we started. I was writing other books when this book just sort of happened, which has been my career so far. And I'm so glad that it did. It just sort of poured out, and I wanted our story to be out there. And I'm working on a second one. It feels like the right thing to do. It's done a lot of good. So I really hope that you enjoy it. All of the other live readings of each chapter are on our Facebook page, and they're also on YouTube. If you don't like to be read to, you can certainly grab the book, and if you want to listen to it, you can go back through all of them. Tonight is chapter 8 and Lucas's story. And 2 weeks ago, we talked about Aaliyah, who's in Grand Forks, who really came into Turtle Mountain Animal Rescue, in the very beginning, and has stuck it out all this time. And Trista was there just before Aaliyah, so she's been in even longer. And Trista has done, like all of us who've been here for a while, a little bit of everything. And mainly now, Trista does a lot for cats. And for the longest time, no one wanted to step up and really work through how do we deal with the cat problem. And Trista's really taken the lead, I think, whether she wanted to or not. She has, and she's done an awesome job. So here we go. We're going to do chapter 8, Angels Get Wings. Manitoba, Canada. Trista couldn't be here with us tonight. She's across the border. And this is Trista's words. So I asked each of the girls and Keith to contribute so that it really could be in their voice. So, quote, Trista: I had been following TMAR for a couple of months. I often commented or liked things on the page. One evening, I received a message from Keith, a complete stranger to me. He explained who he was and asked if I would be willing to help manage the Facebook page and assist in setting up some transports. I didn't hesitate for a second. Shortly after becoming involved, we received a message about a dog that had been beaten with a bat. After, another story came in of a sweet golden-colored pup. Her fur was patchy green from having paint or bleach thrown on her by children. The pictures were so hard to see. The dogs coming in and the stories that followed them were often so depressing. I knew that my help was needed so badly, even though I wanted to scream and cry and be so angry for the suffering these animals endured. At the time, I was 8 months pregnant. Keith was running on empty. He sent me a long message explaining that he wasn't sure he could continue doing what he was doing with so little help. I cried for 3 days straight. I couldn't sleep, wondering what would happen if Keith stepped away. Who would be there to pick up the pieces and care for the animals? End quote. And like Trista said, I think her sentiment is, followed by so many of us, where we get involved because we see 1 or 2 cases of suffering or more, and it's awful. Ultimately for us, we don't now there's not a lot of that. It's a lot of stray animals. It's not abuse and neglect. And the community really are the people on the front lines that are really stepping up and helping, which has really kept all of us in it. If you watch other animal rescue organizations, sometimes it's all doom and gloom, and it's really sad, and it really is, and it's really, really heartbreaking and awful. But there's so much happy. There's so much happy. And so we want to show you guys all the happy and not just those few moments of sad. Keith told Trista and Aaliyah about a grant that Turtle Mountain Animal Rescue might qualify for. If they were awarded the grant, it would be enough money to build a shelter and cover operating costs for a long time. It would be exactly what they needed to succeed where no one had before. At the time, Aaliyah and Trista teamed up with Keith. There were a few $100 in a GoFundMe account and a few hundred followers watching their efforts on Facebook. Nearly all of the rescue expenses, like dog food, supplies, vet bills, transportation, came out of Keith's pocket, the pockets of a few other volunteers, and a handful of donors. They had to get that grant money. It would mean the difference between continuing on or going broke. But there were a few problems. None of them had ever applied for a grant before. In fact, no one had ever done any kind of fundraising before. In order to even qualify for the grant, TMAR would have to show they had $10,000 in the bank. No one knew how to raise $10,000, or if that was even possible. There were obstacles to overcome. For example, there was no local money that could be raised. The very county they were trying to serve had nothing more to give. The state had nothing available for them either. And when it came to doling out government funds for animal welfare, the officials at every level seemed to turn into ghosts. I feel a little wetness down there on my feet. You guys are so sweet.
I think she's nibbling on your...
I think so. I got a quote here from Keith, really talking about those early days when Aaliyah and Trista first came on. Quote, Keith Benning: when we first started doing rescue, I went to everyone. I started with the cities, but they said it was the county's problem or the tribes, and no one had money, or at least they weren't going to spend the money. When you live in the second poorest county in the state, it's hard to get money, especially for the animals. You guys are so sweet. The county did eventually offer to get us a grant for the shelter, but the price was too high and it was too much of a risk. Okay, this is so... You're so sweet. You're so sweet. Can I see you for a moment? Can I see you for a moment and smell you? You're so sweet. Oh, sorry, I can't help it. If I get to come over to Brenda's to snuggle some rescue puppies, I mean, you just take absolutely full advantage of these little hamsters. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Oh, you're such a sweetheart. Oh, you're such a sweet, sweet, sweetheart. Brenda, how do you do anything?
I don't.
Are you still working? My God. You're sleeping? Brenda, are you sleeping at all whatsoever?
Well, not too much. And then I go to Karen's during the day, so...
My goodness.
But no.
This one again. Use a little tiny one. Use a little twinkle one.
Nope, that's so... Chimes.
Oh, there's the little boy.
You'll know now.
Yes, yes. There's... Oh, she is tiny. Okay, I'm going to pick up where I left off here. Quote, Keith Benning. The county did eventually offer to get us a grant for a shelter, but the price was too high and it was too much of a risk. They would own the building and they would lease it to us and charge a fee. We could pay rent each month, but then we were at the whim of future politicians that may or may not support our cause. What happens when the next group of politicians gets voted in? Do they raise the rent? Do they make new rules? Do they cancel our lease? If we were going to do it, we were going to do it right, so that the animals always have a place to go. I originally met with the tribe, and that didn't go anywhere either. We took dogs from the dog catchers so they didn't have to shoot them. We had a meeting, we came up with plans, but it was never followed through. The new council has agreed to law changes, but that has yet to happen. End quote. Remember that this was published in December of 2018, so there's a lot more book to come, as this is only chapter 7, and a lot has changed since then. A really, really lot has changed since then. Beating down dead-end doors became a waste of time and energy. Keith and the Angels were better off going grassroots, boots on the ground, creating a system of the people, by the people, and for the people and the animals. Waiting on someone else to do something, or a government entity and all its red tape to step in, would take too long. Dogs were dying, suffering by the hundreds each year. Thousands more would perish in the coming winters. Okay, hang on. Thousands more would perish in the coming winters, while politicians sat on their hands the way they have done regarding animal welfare for decades. There was no more time for inaction. Keith's choice to create something from nothing would prove to be the right choice and would go on to save countless lives, but not without cost and consequence. So it's been about 5 years. The official shelter data didn't start right away, but is pretty good, fairly accurate. Someone's kept track along the way. And, we're over 5,000 dogs, 5,000 animals, mostly dogs and puppies, cats and kittens, in now in just over 5 years. So it's been a crazy ride. We've done a lot of good. So cool. Thank you so much for being here tonight and being part of it. In order to raise enough money and get good help consistently and permanently, the team would have to overcome their status as nobodies in nowhere land. Who's going to give money to a garage rescue in the middle of nowhere that no one has ever heard of? Keith who? Where? You mean on the reservation? The team encountered daily objections like, I'm not going to give money to the reservation. But they were undeterred. As in, we were undeterred. Rescue recipe. Mix together motivated women hell-bent on saving animals. Pour in 1 dash of unstoppable dude and watch miracles happen. Keith and the Angels began to fly. It was no small feat, and it took many months. But between the bonfire t-shirt campaign, the rummage sale, and an online raffle where they sold donated items, the team of newbie crusaders had actually pulled it off. They raised more than $10,000. Keith Benning, quote, for months and months and months, they did everything they could. When they did the raffle, they raised more than what we needed for the grant. I really thought the grant was the answer. I knew if we applied for it, we would get it. And then we could build a shelter. I really thought that was going to be it for us. End quote. I asked Aaliyah about that grant and what happened next. Aaliyah, quote, Keith was so excited, he couldn't believe we raised the money. We couldn't believe we raised the money. He really thought that was going to be the ticket. But when we went to apply for the grant, it was gone. It had been pulled and was no longer available. Keith was absolutely devastated. I thought he was going to throw in the towel. I really did think it was all going to be over. End quote. You're so sweet. Oh, thank you so much for the little pedicure over there. I'm getting a little pedicure. A little pedicure back here. You're so sweet. Word was out. They were a real rescue. They raised money and had volunteers from around the state pitching in to help. The dozens of animals Keith was taking in each month, and the handful of messages he used to get each day was peanuts in comparison to what was happening now. And I feel like I just peed down my own leg, but I'm pretty sure that I didn't just pee down my own leg. But it's okay, I'm just going to leave it right there.
I can get some wipes, but...
Brenda, we got potty pads and blankets and wipes and all the stuff, but That's okay, little sweetheart. You can pee down my leg anytime. I'm totally, totally okay with it. You deserve that. You get that.
They're not quite potty trained.
Yeah, you get that.
Yeah.
The perception to some was that TMAR was turning a profit off the dogs. Well, that's gonna not be okay someday. Was turning a profit off the dogs, confirming their suspicions that the rescue was just a cover to get rich. Never mind that the Bennings' personal debt from vet bills alone was crippling. Yet still, they didn't take $1 from any of the money raised to pay themselves back, nor did they take any type of wage for their round-the-clock work. When messages came in asking for help with strays, it didn't matter that there was no real shelter, that it was just still Keith and his wife, a garage, and a few volunteers behind the scenes. If they didn't respond right away or weren't able to pick up the next litter of stray pups, didn't matter if it was the 5th litter of the day, the legitimacy of what they were doing was continually questioned. People were always suspicious. Were they just making money and not actually rescuing dogs? Was TMAR a total scam? Someone posted on a local online garage sale page that they had a litter of puppies they were trying to find homes for. When another person suggested they contact TMAR for help, their response was, "I'd rather call the dog catcher than give these dogs to them so that they can make money." Unfortunately, the sentiment was not isolated. Keith Benning, quote, "Some people didn't want to see us succeed, even in rescuing dogs. Some people just don't like to see good things happen on the reservation. The people that live here will agree that that happens. I don't know if it's jealousy or just that they want everyone else to be as miserable as they are. We had people call the state and complain about something they made up. It was all a lie. Someone approached the tribe and tried to ban us from rescuing dogs on tribal land. The most common sabotage still today is people making up fake stories about us stealing dogs, which isn't the case." End quote. Gossip and accusations added to the stress and feelings of burnout the small team faced daily. "They're taking our dogs and selling them for profit" was the most prevalent word vomit that circulated. A statement that proved whoever propagated it knew nothing about what the team was doing. If they did, they would have known there was no money to be made on selling the rescued dogs. TMAR did not sell or adopt out dogs. Turtle Mountain Animal Rescue only rescued them. A business model that spent money but had no reliable source of income coming in. The accusations of stealing and using the dog problem for profit were a slap in the face. Oh, you're so sweet. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Oh, thank you for the attention. Oh, you're so sweet. Yes, you are. I stuck you right here for a second. Brenda, I thought this was a dog. I wasn't sort of paying attention. My gosh. Turtle Mountain Animal Rescue only rescued them, a business model that spent money but had no reliable source of income coming in. The accusations of stealing and using the dog problem for profit were a slap in the face for everyone involved. The volunteers didn't want or need recognition, and they certainly didn't deserve that type of condemnation. Keith took in the worst of the worst medical cases, in addition to surrendered pets and the never-ending unwanted litters. He made sure those animals went to a safe place where they could be adopted. There was not a cent to be made from this type of rescue, only a life savings to be lost. A small amount of money came in from donations by people who believed in the cause. Most of the money that funded the daily operations was put in by Keith himself and the volunteers. No one touched the money the angels raised for the grant. They set that money aside with the hope that one day they could raise enough to build a shelter. The Bennings moved to a larger house with 2 bedrooms on the outskirts of town. The address still remains unknown, and Keith has to protect that privacy like a firstborn child or risk his personal residence turning into a dumping ground for unwanted animals. So I want to stop right there. Keith is still in the house that I wrote about in that paragraph, and I've seen some comments trickle through, I guess over the months that say, why can't anyone just come up there? How come it's not open to the public? And they're comments that sort of, kind of insinuate a shady intent. This is his house. And it's not an animal shelter open to we say open 24/7 because they'll get up 24/7 to go rescue dogs. But unfortunately at this time, it's really not a place that you can sign up to go volunteer and walk dogs. And Keith will always say it's open by appointment only, when necessary. Otherwise, quite honestly, we got shit to do. Work needs to be done. Those guys are busy every single day on the ground. And when it's an actual shelter, volunteers will be so needed and so necessary. But right now, it's just really different. So there's nothing shady. There's no secret. It's the right thing to do still right now. Attached to Keith's home is a pole barn type of garage. A man's garage that was meant to hold tools and trucks and tractors and other man stuff men accumulate. Instead, Keith's cave quickly turned into temporary housing for not just hundreds, but eventually thousands of animals. Animals that displaced all the man stuff that had to be moved somewhere else to make room. On my first visit to Keith's garage, I saw exactly where all that man stuff went. In one corner, piled high. Very high. Keith's garage was immediately transformed into Rescue Central, a small operation with 4 large wire kennels meant to temporarily hold animals until he could find a real shelter to take them. Inside the house, there is a wood-burning fireplace in the main living room. So listen, if you want to know what the rescue is like, the rescue, you mean like Keith's garage in his house. This is exactly it. Inside the house, there's a wood-burning fireplace in the main living room. When his heat went out, I can't remember if it was last winter or the winter after, he sent us a couple of photos of having to scoop snow into 5-gallon pails and set it on top of the wood-burning stove to melt into water to use for, well, everything you use water for. It's just such a remote area, and the hardships out there can be tremendous, and it really is. That's exactly the way it still is today. A floor fan is fastened in the doorway that blows heat into the garage so the dogs don't freeze in the winter. His personal washer and dryer ran 24 hours a day cleaning soiled towels, and his kitchen sink became a place to bathe puppies. His entire house turned into a makeshift animal shelter. The history of the home itself is like a page from the handbook of a religious cult or a scene from the Blair Witch Project, which is too dark and creepy to retell here. But I did some digging into the origins of the property that he lives on. Do you know about this?
No.
About the property that he lives on, about the home, about who lived there previously, about some of the, well, it's gossip and drama and it's all fun to think about. And of course, it's probably only half true, but at some point, Aaliyah and I are going to make a trip out to that sacrificial rock again with Scott. And I'm going to take some video of it this time for you guys. And oh, that wedding veil that we found in the ground when we were out there that we dug up and put on Scott that one time when Keith wasn't there. Yeah, I'm going to put all that in there. There's even a book on that land, which I'm working through to try and figure out what in the hell is going on. Anyway, Keith Benning, quote, "The surrounding land is beautiful, but the water quality from the well is terrible. I have to dump bleach pellets down the well 3 times a year just to cut down on some of the smell. I put in a house filter and softener, but the water is still barely drinkable. On a good week, I can give the dog straight tap water, but on a bad week, I mix half and half with bottled water out of 5-gallon jugs or just straight bottled water." End quote. There were more animals coming in than their new house could hold, and the inevitable soon happened. A garage full of dogs spilled into a house full of dogs. Dogs like Lucas. And that is the end of chapter 7, and Lucas's story is next. If you signed up for the raffle... Oh, you got 2 of them sleeping? I'll move out of the way so that they can see it sleeping. If you signed up for the raffle, don't let everything I just said about Keith's house and property scare you. Maybe a little. Maybe don't go out into the woods. I don't think Aaliyah's ever going to go out into the woods again. But Keith is a very, very good and generous and lovely host that will bend over backwards to have whatever you need. And I have not stayed in it, but he has a very nice outdoor campsite and with all the accommodations. So if you win that really rare, cool, interesting trip to the rescue and you get to stay out there, you won't be drinking water with bleach pellets. He would not let that happen. You'll be drinking, actual bottled water or whatever. So cheers. I hope you all are well tonight. Brenda's a little bit occupied, and so she's not looking at comments. I mean, shame on you, Brenda, for not being able to do everything. If you guys have some questions, I'm going to kind of scroll back and see. Otherwise, your comments are so lovely and wonderful. And then sometimes, once in a while, kind of they're not. Once in a while, anyway. Randy, you're crashing the party. And Scott, I know you're crashing the party too. Brenda, what time do we have? Do you know? Or do you have a clock in your home? I bet you do somewhere. So I've got Lucas's story here, and I'm just wondering, should I read Lucas's story? Are you guys still around? 726. That chapter was a little long, so I don't know whether or not I should read Lucas's story. I think since we got the puppies here, I'm just gonna go for it. And I didn't cry. Lucas's story is really one of my favorites, so I'm gonna read it probably without any additional, ad-lib commentary. What, you okay, Brenda? Can we go for it?
Absolutely.
All right, sounds good. Okay, Lucas's story. Someone reported to the police that a vicious pit bull had attacked their family dog and was still hanging around on the porch. Keith was on duty that night and dispatched to check out the scene. Quote, "When I walked up to the porch, his head was split wide open. It was like an open zipper to his skull. His head was full of blood. Someone had messed this dog up bad, I thought. This was not just a dog fight. I talked to him nice and his tail wagged, and he put his head down and I slipped a leash around him. He'd gotten into a fight with a resident dog over food because he was totally starving. He was a fur-colored skeleton with cuts and bite marks all over, and someone hit him over the head with a shovel. He was a total mess. He was going to cost a lot of money to save, I thought. How are we going to afford this? We can't." The other cop looked at me and said, "You want me to do it, or you want to do it?" The dog just sat there at my side. He looked up at me and wagged his tail. He looked like he was saying, "Keith, please help me." And I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. I threw a blanket over the back seat and took him home. Oh. He was in so much pain that night. I used steri strips and duct tape to patch up his head. I had no idea what I was doing. His wounds were so bad. I Frankensteined him up with gauze and hugs and did the best I could. An ER vet bill would have been at least $300, and we were already thousands of dollars in debt to the vet. Just a little side note there, this isn't now. This is a long time ago when there was a lot less help, and there was, no money for that kind of stuff. It was all out of pocket. Lucas didn't have 1 ounce of aggression through anything I did to him, and this dog was in so much pain. He cried all night long. He didn't want outside. It was just an I hurt cry. I didn't sleep for more than a few minutes at a time that night. Thank you. I got up to comfort him, and then I'd go back to bed and he'd cry again. He just wanted someone to stay with him. I called a vet in Grand Forks that night. She said she'd be there at 7:30 a.m. to come out and see him. Or see you, yeah. Grand Forks is nearly 3 hours away, but she showed up at 7:30 on the dot and brought him back with her to the clinic. She stitched him up, fixed his broken teeth, and took care of him. End quote. You're so sweet. Yes, you are. Do you smell wine on my breath? Do you like wine too? Yeah, you need. Oh, you got a little makeup on you. Tanya, one of the foster coordinators at No Dog Left Behind, a canine rescue in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota, 8 hours from where Lucas was found, agreed to take him in. I reached out to them looking for an update on where he is today, and I was delighted to find him. One of my favorite things about writing the book was reaching out to the people that have some of these dogs and getting the updates and the pictures and chatting with them. It was pretty cool. Tanya and the crew at No Dog Left Behind had never seen or read the article about Lucas that was published in the Grand Forks Herald while he was under vet care there. She also didn't know the details about how Keith came to find Lucas that night. All she knew was that he was in bad shape and had come from a world that was cruel to him. Tears were shed between us as we exchanged messages about Lucas's harrowing journey. Tanya took Lucas into her home about 2 years ago, and still, as I write this today, he has never left her family. Lucas is still up for adoption. When I found that out, I was shocked. Why wasn't he adopted? She told me he loved kids, is good with other dogs, but probably wouldn't do well with cats. Like every other dog. She said he's well-mannered and house-trained, and Lucas is totally normal, perfect, lovable family dog. But I knew exactly why Lucas had not been moved along the rescue chain. Lucas is branded with a stigma that plagues his entire breed. Not actually a breed, but a stigma that keeps dogs like him from being adopted. Dogs like Lucas are sentenced to death in shelters across the United States in unconscionable numbers because of 2 words. Pit bull. Brenda, what do you think these little guys are?
My best guess is a pit bull.
And so, pit bull isn't a breed. It's sort of a name given to dogs that have fat, flat heads, alligator smiles, a lot of loyalty, and what we've been taught is a lot of scary. Remember Marge? Well, yeah, you remember Marge. You guys remember Marge? Margie had, I think 10 or 11 puppies or whatnot. One of the adopters of one of her puppies sent back the DNA. I can't remember if I posted or not. But none of the bully breeds that are sort of typically considered pit bulls were in there at all. I think it was Akita, Chow Chow, Retriever, something like that. I'll have to post it so that this is accurate. But it wasn't any of the typical bully breeds. Like Margie wasn't even a pit bull. If she had been in any other shelter, in the United States or specifically down south, and they had put the words pit bull on the little white, erase board on the outside of the shelter, her chances are freaking awful. Her chances are awful. The statistics are horrifying when you actually dig into them, which is what I did. The statistics on how many pit bull type dogs labeled pit mix or pit X that go into shelters and never come out leave me gasping for air. Exact statistics vary from agency to agency, but it's safe to say that at least 20% of all dogs going into shelters are labeled pit mix. Of those, 40% don't make it out alive. A stark contrast from the Labrador Retriever, who has an estimated 7% kill rate after entering a shelter, and the German Shepherd at just 2%. There's an unfounded discrimination against pit bull-looking dogs that is the reason for the massive chasm between which dogs live and which dogs die. I'm going to stop for just a second. I'm really going to dig into this in my next book, but like, here's the reality. I want a purebred, I want a lab, I want a golden retriever, I want a German Shepherd. The Labrador Retriever has an estimated 7% kill rate after entering a shelter. 1, purebred labs are entering shelters. 2, 7% of those purebreds are getting euthanized just because they don't get adopted. For German Shepherds, it's 2%. For anything that is labeled a pit or mislabeled a pit, it's 40% are being euthanized. So, I mean, adopt, don't shop. And now is the time. I mean, it's just, how come, I mean, you just only know what you know. Like, I didn't know. We had bought dogs, and I could talk about this we had all bought dogs. It was purebreds, and we revered them. And, like, I get that. I still have one of those dogs. I still have a Franken dog. She's the worst freaking dog I've ever had. I just thought, in some ways, but the pit bull that I have, who's not a pit bull, I don't know what she is, just a mixed breed, is super freaking awesome. And, you know, you hear that, and people are like, oh, my daughter, someone rescued a pit bull, and they say it's the nicest dog, or da-da-da. Like, it's true. Like, there's bad dogs, for sure. But most of them aren't. And adopting is really the only way to go going forward when you know better. And so this is what Tanya said about Lucas. Quote, some of the other ladies in the rescue believe that Lucas sabotages his meet and greets because he loves living with me. Honestly, I don't mind having him around. I'm a huge advocate for the breed and work towards removing the stigma that comes when someone hears the words pit bull. Lucas and I are snuggle buddies. He loves to lounge on the sofa and watch TV, but I better be rubbing his belly too, or he'll make sure to let me know that I'm forgetting something by nudging or pawing my arm. He absolutely adores children, and he has a blast with most of the foster dogs that come through my house. He has learned to sit, shake, stay, lay down. He's great with all of them. Lucas has become a favorite at the crew of No Dogs Left Behind, and we are all very protective of him and continue to search far and wide for his ever family. And there you have it. Another dog well taken care of, but stuck in the system of foster and adoption. Lucas is why Adopt Don't Shop matters. Buying animals from pet stores and breeding dogs to bring more of them into a world that cannot take care of their brothers and sisters keeps millions of dogs like Lucas stuck in a system and sentenced to death. A friend once told me that if I bought a dog, it would sentence 7 other shelter dogs to death. I may or may not have been skeptical. I was curious to see if that was just rhetoric or if those stats were close to the truth. I dug in to find out, and what I wanted to know was, does buying a dog sentence other shelter dogs to death? And the answer that I found was yes. Yes, it does. And so I listed some stats. Might sound a little dry, you know, being read to, but they're all here, page 86 of Rescue Matters, if you want to read them. 45 million households in the U.S. have a dog. 1.5 million of those have a rescued dog. 43.5 million households have a dog that was intentionally brought into the world. Blah, 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 blah. There's a few other things in here. Here's the summary. Of those 43.5 million homes that have bought dogs, of the 43.5 million homes in the United States that have bought dogs, if just 1 in every 64 families adopted a dog instead, It would end euthanasia for all dogs in shelters across the United States. You can do the math. You can look it up. It was true what that person once told me that I didn't necessarily not believe. I just wanted to fact check you myself, Brenda. That was just all I really wanted to do.
All right.
Conservatively, 670,000 dogs get euthanized because they did not get adopted or are deemed unadoptable, or there's simply just no room. Ending euthanasia of healthy, unwanted dogs is a problem that is solvable and within our grasp. A rescue revolution has begun. Through awareness, education, and encouraging one another to adopt, not shop, we can end the suffering of millions of homeless dogs right now. Not in 20 years. Not in the next generation. Right now. If we do nothing, we sentence dogs waiting in shelters to death. And the next ones in line for that kennel share the same fate, and the next, and the next. The end of Lucas's story before I cry. In 2 weeks, we're going to do chapter 9, which I like chapter 9. I really like chapter 9. Dogs because people suck. But it's not a downer. I mean, I found it to be really interesting material, and I remember someone saying to me, I feel like I just got schooled in a history lesson, but I hate history and I couldn't stop reading, and I was like, yes, like job done for that one person. So that was such a cool comment. I'm gonna let you guys go. I don't want to drag this out too long. You can find the Turtle Mountain Animal Rescue gear, shirts and hats and all the stuff on the website. Rescue Matters is on the website as well. All the copies off of the website are signed. Otherwise, you can pick it up on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or anywhere online that books are sold. Thanks, Brenda, for letting me into your home tonight and letting us in with your little guys. And Amanda's going to be on tonight at 9:30 live at the rescue. I know you haven't seen live at the rescue for a few nights, so don't miss that. And I'll be back again in 2 weeks. Thank you so much for following. Don't hesitate to private message me if there's anything that you want to chat about, like we're in this together. Let's do a lot of good, everybody. Let's do a lot of good together. I know that we can. Bye. Bye, Brenda.
Okay.